Hi and welcome to the Let's Get Mental, the podcast. This is the theme of leaving 2020 behind, and what you just heard was our fabulous new intro music created by one of our young advisors, Ollie. So shout out to him and thanks for that. What we want to discuss today on the podcast, my name's Harry and I'm here with Bri and Archie, if you guys want to say hello.
Hiya.
Hello.
Good. Well done, guys. That was good. We've got past the first hurdle. So what we want to talk about is leaving 2020 behind. And obviously, with how this year's been, a lot of people are obviously naturally devastated to leave the year behind because it's just been really successful and great for everyone worldwide, really. It's been really fun. Nothing at all bad has happened. Apart from a hell of a lot of sarcasm coming from me because it has been like the world's been on fire. That's from my own perspective. But what we want to discuss really is about how we move past the sort of events that have happened this year and how we don't stay stuck in this spot of reflecting on all the negative and, you know, sort of holding on to that. And we also want to discuss the effect it's had on people's mental health, the impact it has then had on the mental health services, and sort of what we can do to make sure that we're staying proactive and progressive and moving forward going into 2021. So you're listening to this on New Year's Eve. So we felt like it was the perfect time really to discuss this. So I first want to ask you, Bri, how have you found the sort of events that have happened this year, like the impact it's had for you personally on your mental health, and has it, like, the journey that you've had personally this year and sort of where you're at now?
So for me, I've been in mental health services for the majority of my teenage years, and I'm 20 now. And I was actually discharged from services when I was 18. And kind of since then, it was like almost a bit of an uphill constant, like I was constantly getting stronger, constantly getting better, more confident. Nothing had kind of come as an obstacle in my way. And then 2020 happened, and all the anxieties that had been just kind of bubbling under the surface, but I'd been able to keep a lid on, literally just exploded. It was like somebody got a bottle of pop, put some mints in it and shook it up. And like, I'm a self-admitting control freak. So 2020 really didn't go well with that side of things, and just the constant unknown. So I'm at university, I'm in my third year of university now. Obviously was in my second year when it all kicked off, and just the constant not knowing what's happening, things being cancelled, changed. One time you're doing one thing and then it's another thing, and then I remember when we throw it back to sort of March time, and everyone was like, 6 months of just, lockdown, 6 months of real hard times, and it will all be better for Christmas. And then now here we are, and it's still not better. So it's just been learning to adapt, I think, for me. And in terms of my mental health, it's been a real struggle. It's been a constant sort of, I'd say, up and down wave. Like one thing would happen and it'd set me back, and then I'd manage to get over it. And then another thing had happened and it'd set me back, and I'd have to get over that. And it was just sort of a constant cycle of, reassuring myself and putting things in place to support myself. But in some ways, I guess I could say it's taught me a lot about myself, about the people around me, and about what I'm sort of capable of dealing with, because, it's been a horrible year. It's been really, really horrible. And there's been a lot of losses and a lot of, real crap times. And I've made it, and here I am, and hopefully still going to keep trooping on for however long this lasts.
Yeah, thank you, Bri. How do you feel now, sort of, as you're reflecting on the year whilst we're still in it? Because I find, like, when you talk about this year, some of it feels like it was 10 years ago, some of it feels like it just happened, and it's this sort of weird, like, wave machine of thoughts coming back. How do you feel like actually talking about it now?
Yeah, it is really weird because we're like reflecting on it, but it's still not over. So we're reflecting on what could be the majority of it. 3 months down the line, we might be in such a better place, or we could only be reflecting on the tip of the iceberg. So it is really strange when you think about it like that. But I guess I haven't really thought about it like that. I think I'm just very hopeful that it's constantly going to be getting better. But who knows? I think what was weird for me is thinking back to, like, I don't know if anyone out there's got Snapchat, and the Snapchat memories come up.
Yeah.
And like memories from this time last year, and thinking about what I was doing and seeing the pictures of me in like massive crowds in clubs and stuff. And like I looked back at my photos, and literally I think my boyfriend's birthday is in March the 12th. And I remember we went out on his birthday, and literally I think it was 5 days after we went out to this club, loads of people there. You know what it's like when you're drunk in a club and there's just people everywhere. And I think it was 5 days after I was home, because everything had been shut down. And it's just crazy when you look at how quickly everything has changed, and how it's changed in ways that probably won't ever change back. So a lot of like the online learning and a lot of the things that have changed this year are going to be things that are going to now stick around forever. So it's like this year, reflecting on it, is such an important year in whatever we call it. It's caused so much change for like the good, and also obviously bad. A lot of people have lost people and things like that. So
Yeah. It is really weird reflecting on this, because like you said, it's almost anxiety looking back on the way we used to live now, where it's like, oh my god, why are you near so many people, you don't know where they've been and what bubble are they in. I mean, actually, how do you feel reflecting on this year?
This year's been it's been interesting, there's no doubt about that. I mean, obviously in terms of the events that have happened around the world, and obviously everyone dealing with different situations, and it's weird because I feel like I've had it. I mean, from my personal perspective, this year's been interesting in the sense that I've done a lot of different things this year, and changed a lot of things about my life, and tried to go in different directions. But if you're talking it from a more public sense, obviously, like looking for people's different perspectives. I mean, it's weird because obviously I have my mum, she's been on the COVID response team, so I've been hearing first updates about what's going to be happening to the country, and in a sense about what's going on what's going to be going on in the country. And then obviously I've also got a friend who lives down in London, and obviously I've been getting his perspective about what's been happening in London, how it's been for him. I mean, he's been telling me stories about how work has been for him, and it's interesting to hear it from a different perspective, obviously from someone who's obviously not, I guess in the deep depths of like, well, where coronavirus can really be spreading, and how, and different tier levels and stuff like that. And I mean, he was telling me about one of the places he worked got raided by the police, and they got fined £10,000. And obviously he's been struggling for work as well, which has been unfortunate for him. And just hearing about how he's coping with his life. Then I've also got a friend in Switzerland that I've been speaking to, asking how sort of the COVID pandemic and how stuff has been for him over there, and it's interesting hearing his perspective on that as well. But I guess for me this year, it's been, I think similar situation to Brian. It's had its up and downs. Not really personally for me. I'd say I haven't really been affected, majority speaking, by COVID-19 or what's happened this year. I mean, don't get me wrong, I have missed going out to certain places that I enjoyed doing. I have missed, obviously, with the whole situations with gyms being shut, that has been an unfortunate one for me. But in a sense, from that though, I've learnt to be to look after myself at home better. I've learned to look after my mental well-being and my physical well-being a lot better at home. So I feel like now, if they said that these were going to these things that I like doing are going to be closed for another 2 months, I would be, do you know what, I'll probably be okay about that. But of course, it was quite shocking when it first happened. But I think going back to what you were both saying about the idea that we might be on the tip of the iceberg, I think it's a big coincidence that obviously all this happened in... sorry, it's not a big coincidence that all this happened in this year. Obviously, I think it's just completely random that all these events happened around the same time, and obviously the way that they've been dealt with might have made situations worse and feel worse in that sense. And I understand why, how things have been dealt in this country, but I think people may have to accept that 2021, whilst everyone I'm sure hopes it's better, you don't know what the world could bring. I mean, as I say, it could get better, it could get worse. I just don't want people getting this idea that it's going to be better in 2021.
Yeah, it's sort of like Cinderella, like the clock strikes midnight. I think that's what everyone's sort of waiting for.
Yeah.
On New Year's, it's that sort of idea of, right, it's going to go midnight, and then COVID's going to be abolished.
Well, yeah, let's go back clubbing. Let's go to the pubs.
Yeah, all the politicians have got their act together. Everyone's been paid a fair wage. All the civil rights and equal rights movements, everyone's got exactly what they need, and everyone's being treated peacefully, and we're in this sort of utopia now. But, you know, I think there's a thing to talk about with expectations. And I know, like Brian mentioned earlier, for me, when we look back, you was talking about your boyfriend's birthday being on the 12th. Mine was on the 21st, and we went into lockdown, I believe it was the 23rd. And there was just this really weird feeling at that time of, okay, so we'll give it 3 weeks, because that was the initial line, wasn't it? It was a 3-week lockdown. And we're 9 months ahead. And I think where I kept shooting myself in the foot was an expectation of how to be, of how to feel, of how to cope with things, how fast I needed to deal with things. And from people I've spoken to at work and friends and family, it's been this really weird time of, you know, when everything stops, you don't have all those distractions there. And when we've spoken about the impact it's had on our own mental health, I feel like I can safely say it's happened for a lot of people, just from the different ages and backgrounds and classes that I've spoken to, and individual people, where this thing happened where we all had to stop. And for some people, it brought up a lot of triggers, a lot of thoughts, a lot of feelings that they didn't know that we were even struggling with, because normal life keeps us so busy, and we had the freedom, in a sense, to distract ourselves with work, distract ourselves with doing something after work. We distracted ourselves with, you know, doing something on a nighttime, whether that was going out or drinking or seeing friends or the gym, or, you know, we could have a really, really busy schedule and get through life that way. And then that opportunity wasn't there anymore. And I know for me, personally, a lot of stuff happened over the last couple of years that I don't think until lockdown happened that I had wanted to process, or I thought I had got over it, but I'd just really been distracting myself the whole time. And when we talk about lessons learned from this year, I think that's been a big thing. Well, it's been the massive driving force for me staying well, and I feel okay now because I'm just taking each day as it comes, and not setting expectations too high, and, you know, sort of all I can control is myself, my own actions. And you know, I don't know if anyone else, if either of you two sort of have had to adapt a new sort of way of approaching day-to-day life, or how you manage things. I know you said, Bri, before about being a self-identified control freak. How do you feel like, in terms of lessons learned, that what have you learned this year that you've sort of adapted? Because I feel like for me, these are all changes that I've needed to do for a very long time, and this was the opportunity for it. But at the time, it was like, why are you cursing me with all these thoughts? But, you know, it's really been an opportunity to sort of do some self work.
Yeah, definitely. Like I said, I'm a control freak, and I think everyone kind of joked about it as I was growing up. But I mean, it's definitely led by a lot of my anxieties that I've never really properly faced. But this year, it really came to a head when I had absolutely no control on what was going on. And it led to me kind of, you know, having multiple breakdowns just in the kitchen, screaming at I think it was my dad and my brother were just kind of explaining the recent rules that have been announced. And I just started crying and screaming and covering my ears, because I just couldn't cope with somebody else being taking away what felt like all of my control and all of my sort of freedom. So it really came to a head then, and, you know, it was learning who I am, and that's okay, that's part of me. Yes, I may feel like I constantly have to be in control of things, but there's ways of getting around it. Okay, at that point in time, I couldn't control that part of my life, but what I could control was other parts. So I decided, you know what, I think I picked up Couch to 5K. So I started doing Couch to 5K, and I was like, so I can plan when I'm, you know, doing this routine of, you know, going for some exercise, or when I'm going for walks or taking my dog out. And I just had to organize my life a little bit so that I felt still in control whilst also still not having much control. It's just kind of also realizing when to challenge yourself, because yeah, it's nice to pass the control over to something else in your life, but I still needed to make sure that I wasn't becoming too obsessed on controlling things, because that's also not healthy. Sorry. So yeah, it's just kind of a massive learning curve in terms of, I think, like you said, Harry, like learning more about yourself, learning what you have coped with previously and what you haven't, and also how you go about dealing with that in the middle of a global pandemic is like crazy, because you're stuck with all these emotions and new things that you've learned about yourself, and then you've got minimal support to get through it. But you know, touch wood, managed to figure it out, managed to get here, and I dare say that I'm totally better, but I'm definitely more self-aware of how I respond to things and how I feel when I feel out, how I react when I feel out of control. And now I can kind of pick up on those signs a little bit earlier and try put interventions in place to make sure I'm not getting that bad. But I've been very lucky in the fact that I've been able to kind of work on myself. I think there are a lot of people out there who are still struggling with that.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. I think I got some more feedback there. I sounded like a Dalek, essentially. I think there's something on Bry's end where she may or may not be in a cave.
So it's all right, don't worry.
Makes us all echo. But yeah, moving forward, what we want to talk about, obviously, it's called Leaving 2020 Behind today. And I want to talk about how do we move past 2020. And I guess the first thing that we have to do in order to sort of actually do that is address the sort of after effects and the long-term effects of this year on everyone. But more specifically, what we want to address is mental health conditions and how it's impacted mental health services. So I want to come to you straight away, Archie. And what are you projecting, I guess, on the long-term effects that 2020's had on mental health conditions and mental health services?
Oh, I think it's going to completely reshape it. I think this has been well, I know how you said about a long time coming, but I think, in terms of like changing yourself, but I think this is a long time coming for mental health services. Like, I mean, obviously I can speak from what I've heard from my mum again, who's works in these areas and works in the Midlands area to do with the services there. These places are being overwhelmed right now with people trying to get beds, people trying to be seen, contacted, and it amazes me how, I think it's really shown the NHS that, like, there is a massive push with mental health, and like in the sense that people have struggled a lot with their mental health during lockdowns, and clearly the NHS does not have either the funding or right now the services to provided to these people right now. And I think in terms of how it's going to change it, I think we're going to see a massive push now to have more mental health services available, different types of ways that people can contact them. I think obviously the whole online, people going online using Zoom calls and interacting with their GPs and stuff like that. I think that's going to be hugely looked at now. But in terms of actually people's mental health and how it's affected them, I mean, without a doubt, I think this year has possibly been the worst year of affecting people's mental health. I think anybody who might have bottled down a lot of their inner feelings, I think might have come out during the lockdowns and stuff like that. I think a lot of people who are quite resilient have found it very, very hard to cope during the pandemic. And I think, in a sense, I think it's a good thing, because I think this is only going to show that, we do need to take mental health far, far more seriously, just as a country.
Yeah, it's funny because I know for us as young advisors, we've had the Let's Get Mental conference. It'll be coming up on its third year next year. And we've sort of been saying this since we've started, that there's such a need for efficiency just across the board in mental health services, and people really need to listen to what we're saying. And every time we do an event or we run a conference, or even when we do the podcast, all the feedback we get is people really taking on board what we're saying and being motivated and wanting to make the change. And then this year's happened, and it's almost like the general public has sort of got on board and gone, wow, we didn't realize that this was a thing, which, well, as big of a problem as it actually is and has been for a very long time. But, you know, when we discuss mental health services, we can only ever relate to our own experiences and our family's experiences. And I feel like there is this level of, not malicious, but there's still ignorance to how the services run, the different mental health conditions, what that presents itself like. And when Brian mentioned earlier about struggling with control, I know that that is a very common symptom across the board for a lot of different mental health conditions where, you know, you've recovered and then this sort of after effect is this sort of need for control, but it's out of fear, you know, and it's out of fear of things going wrong or things going backwards, or, you know, it's not how people usually use the word. So that's just one example, but I do think that the conversations that I've been having is that people have been having, and on social media and on the news, has been a lot more patient than I think I've ever seen, and a lot more understanding. So, you know, there has been some positive effects, and I want to come to you again, Bri, and ask what positive effects have you noticed that has come as a consequence or as a product of the events of this year, and has it motivated you personally? What positives do you think we can take from 2020 moving into 2021?
I think in terms of mental health, I'd like to say, as horrible that it is that so many people have suffered this year, in some ways, I think Archie kind of briefly mentioned it. It's drawn people's attention to it like this. A lot of people who are previously ignorant to the impacts of mental health and the issues that people with mental health conditions go through. A lot of people this year have felt those feelings of, you know, isolation or desperation and things like that. And in a way, sometimes going through such hard times and through like almost crisis as a nation can hope to bring people together again. And hopefully, you know, everything that everybody has gone through this year and all the pain and the heartache and the loss of loved ones and the impacts of everything that's happened, you know, people's coping mechanisms being taken away, people being on their own and isolated from their loved ones, and the pain of everything that's happened, hopefully in some ways that can give the mental health system and, you know, society as a whole that massive kick up the arse to say, okay, mental health is something we can't just overlook. Because was it something silly like in September there was more deaths from suicide than there was from coronavirus, which literally just, I remember seeing a paper reporting it and it was trending on Twitter and everything. It, you know, people were like, oh my God, this is not something that we can overlook, because everyone was so scared about this pandemic virus. But people have realized now that, you know, mental health and mental illness is just as important and something that has been around for a very, very long time and taking people's lives daily. Everything that we've been through this year, I'm kind of hoping that spurs a lot of people on, and sort of, again, mental health services makes them realize that, okay, something needs to change because we weren't working effectively and we weren't able to see everyone that we should see, and we aren't very adaptable or dynamic or whatever because it took them so long to adapt to working online and things like that. So I'm hoping that it's, yeah, basically giving everyone a kick up the backside to say we need to take this more seriously.
Yeah, no, I do think that that's a big part of how we're going to leave 2020 behind is, you know, as we've already discussed, it's acknowledging the sort of potential long-term effects that this could have. I mean, we say long-term, but we don't know because we're not in the future yet. So we kind of have to acknowledge what's happened. We have to acknowledge the past, and whilst remaining present and sort of being not cautious, but just sort of proactive for the future and taking the positives from it and really looking and saying, you know, as a mental health service or as a person, as an individual, I know what I've struggled with, you know, and the services know what they've struggled with. And here's how we fixed it for ourselves, for others, for the services. oh, here's how we've managed it. This is what we can take going forward. And I think that's going to be a massive key to how we can leave 2020 behind. So I just want to move on, and I want to get both of your thoughts on how you're feeling approaching this new year. I know there's obviously at the minute we're sort of looking at a third wave potentially. I know in the last couple of days we've had the highest number of cases of COVID that we've reported all year. Tier 4 has been introduced. I'm trying to remind myself whether it's tier 4 or tier 5, because I know there's talks about tier 2,300 and 700 and whatever. I know that one of the things on Twitter was tier 7's where Davina McCall stands outside your house and asks you to evict one of your housemates, which, you know, throw a bit of flair in there. Why not? As long as it's socially distanced. I think people are just getting confused with what's going on at the minute. But yeah, actually, I want to come to you. How are you feeling approaching this new year and sort of where we're currently at, like as in this week? Because obviously it changes week to week.
I mean, I think everyone's got to be prepared that I don't think, like as we said earlier, everything's going to go back to normal. I think, as I say, the third wave, I mean, we always said that, you know, we've got the first wave now, we've got a second wave now. I mean, that will be the last of it, and now we're getting the third wave. I genuinely think that, you know, COVID isn't going to be going away anytime soon. I don't think people are going to be going back to partying and clubbing and doing all the things as normal as quickly as they think. Just because the clock strikes midnight and it's a new year doesn't mean that anything's changed in terms of numbers. We still
Is it not? Really?
Well, I mean,
are you meaning to tell me that when the clock changes to the 1st of January 2021 that all of this isn't gone? Is that what you mean to tell me?
Well, no, unfortunately, I don't think it is. I mean, of course, the clock changes, the numbers on that, but in terms of the number and statistics of how many people are getting infected with COVID and the spread rates and things like that, that isn't going anywhere. And I mean, especially things like masks. I think even if COVID did actually completely go away, I still think we see people walking around with masks just as it was like a normal thing, really.
Mm-hmm. Well, sorry. I would just like to apologise to the audience of the Let's Get Mental podcast for all those spoiler alerts that I actually just gave. If you haven't.
Spoiler of chapter 2021.
Yeah, sorry, that actually just spoiled all that for you.
Sorry, yeah. Travel back in time to tell you how worse it is, yeah. So this time next year we're in wave 59, you know, and they have helicopters going around. You're not allowed to go and take your bins out, otherwise you will be shot on sight. And
wow.
No, but I mean, I really hope that, you know, a difference is made. But at the same time, I can't, like, the government has shown how far they are willing to go, like, and how far they are willing to go to make preparations and deal with the situation at hand. And if we keep if I look at it like this, if the first and second wave didn't go after the preparations we've made, then what makes me think that the third wave is going to be any different, or the fourth and the fifth? The only way that I truly feel like anything is going to remotely change is when we have a proper vaccine. And I know we have got a vaccine, but I know they were talking about that one that would have to take like 2 years to develop, or, you know, properly. And then even after that, it mutates. I mean, that's what we've seen already. We've seen different strains of coronavirus, and different way. Obviously, I think the vaccine still works, but these are the things you have to think about, that, you know, these things will pop up and we'll have to deal with them in different situations. But I mean, yeah, I hope that the new year is different, to sum it all up.
Yeah, no, I agree with a lot of what you've said. It's sort of, you know, being realistic about expectations, which has obviously been a theme for what we've spoken about today. So, Brian, I want to come to you about the next point, which is how, in terms of like interpersonal effectiveness and your own close relationships, how have you found that this year has impacted on your close relationships, if it has at all? I mean, there's been a theme, a conversation of, are we more reliant on each other, or has it sort of shown the importance of these relationships? And, you know, has your circle changed? How are you feeling about relationships in general? Because I know it's a bit difficult at the minute when we can't really see everyone.
Yeah, I think it's sort of for me anyway, it's highlighted those who are close to me and those who sometimes I just associate with because they're easy. I don't sorry to anyone listening who's friends with me. But just, you know, it's really highlighted to me who in my life it's really important to see, and you know, the importance of making that time to send your nan a text message or whatever. And it I think in terms of family, it's really highlighted the importance of keeping in contact, and a lot of my family I haven't been able to see for a very long time because I've been at university. So that was tough. That was, you know, difficult going back to university, and I think in September time it started hitting a lot closer to home. So when I went back to uni, all of a sudden people I knew were getting coronavirus, and it felt like it was, you know, almost closing in on me a little bit. So I was a bit worried for my family's safety and my friends' safety. So yeah, it has really highlighted those important people in your life, and how sometimes I think we can get caught up in the busyness of life, or, you know, going out with people who you think are your friends and going out drinking, and then when it comes down to the nitty gritty of it, I realised that no, the people who are really important to me are often the ones who are kind of just in the background and are always happen to be there, you know, helping me along, but behind the scenes. So yeah, I think for me it's been a bit of a weird one, because I've learned the friends and family and the people that are significant to me are the ones that have been there all along. I just never actually recognised them as much. And being a young sort of person, all you want to do is go and sort of explore the world and do all the stuff. You become a bit selfish, I think. Especially as I've gone off to university, everything becomes about you, this new life that you've built. And it's really hit home at how important it is not to forget where you came from and who's been there by your side all along, even if they've been kind of just in the background a little bit.
Yeah, no, I think I think you're spot on with everything you said. I know I completely relate with that. I know a lot of my coping mechanisms over the last couple of years, and since I turned 18, was going out, and it wasn't about drinking as much as it was about socializing and finding these new people and sort of exploring who I was. And you know, you end up becoming a bit passive in the situations you get yourself into. And I think the biggest lesson I've learned in terms of relationships and things is that, you know, some things run their course and friendships run their course, and you are closer with some people at some point and then other people at other points. And you brought up a really interesting point, Bri, about how the people in the background who are consistently there, you know, you sort of need to be a lot more grateful for, and keep those relationships strong, because they are your foundations at the end of the day. But saying that, you might disconnect from people for whatever reasons, and I know my own actions when I wasn't, you know, in my right mind frame were the best towards other people. But instead of sitting with regret and guilt and shame, you know, I can sort of wish those people well and hope for the best, you know, even if things ended badly. I don't think going forward into 2021, I don't think there's any room for any of us to harbor negativity towards anyone in our lives. You know, people might have wronged you and you might have fallen out with people or whatever, but there is absolutely no harm in sort of addressing that, you know, this just didn't work. And all you can do moving forward is wish that person well, and, you know, learn from mistakes, learn from your own actions, and just continue that self-growth and that self-work. Archie, how do you feel that this year has sort of impacted on your close relationships?
It's nice to know that you think I'd have a close relationship. No, I mean, with friends and family, I mean, it's been, I mean, with friends, I'd say that my closest friends are the ones I speak to online. So, like, I would say that...
This has been brilliant for you, then.
Yeah, oh, yeah, I mean, the thing is, that's it, really.
But, like, can you stay 2 meters away? You're like, no problem. That is perfectly fine.
That's it, really. I mean, like, a lot of my really closest friends that I talked and I have great conversations with, they're the ones online that, I mean, as I say, the friend down in London, the friend in Switzerland, they're the ones that I talk to most, and I feel like I have a great connection with, and have, you know, great talks about COVID and stuff like that with them. And so in terms of like affecting that relationship, I haven't noticed anything different then. I mean, obviously, I've heard it from their point of views. I've heard how they might be struggling. I've heard how if things have, you know, when times have been hard for them, how it's, you know, it's obviously awful to hear from their side, and how they're, you know, they're struggling with their mental health and that sort of stuff. And I'm obviously, I always say, tell them that I'm always here to talk and stuff like that. In terms of family, I think it's been, it sounds horrible again, but it's been a bit of a blessing for us, because I mean, I would rarely ever see my parents when, you know, before 2020, really. I mean, I'd see them, but I mean, like, it was very much like they were very, very much like almost at work all the time, and I would never see them. They would never be around the house. They said it themselves. They could never just enjoy themselves at all. They were working far too much. And my mum even said that, like, she had to use retail therapy to help herself get through some of the weeks, and she didn't realize how bad it was till COVID came along, and she started working at home because my brother's mental health deteriorated quite a bit, and she decided to take time off work to come and look after him. And from doing that, it's been a bit of a blessing in the sense, because she's actually realized how much she was working and doing general practice, and she's realized how much she hates it, and she wants to go into a new career. So she's now doing a lot of work for Health Harmony and these different areas of the NHS, and she loves it now, because she feels like, for example, this Christmas, she feels like it's the first Christmas, even though we're with all the COVID and stuff going on, she feels it's the first time that she's actually been able to enjoy Christmas in such a long time, because she feels like she's not consistently working away from home. She can actually, you know, put up the Christmas decorations and stuff like that, and, you know, be part of the family. And I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, it's affected, you know, my family in the sense that I think some of them have struggled with COVID quite a bit. I mean, I know my little brother has found it a bit hard, because I think he's quite a social creature. I think he likes his I don't know why I said creature. He does like his friends and stuff like that. And then my older brother, I think he's quite a similar situation to me actually. He doesn't really go out very much, but once again, I think just not being able to do his boxing, because that was quite a good sort of therapy for his mental health. That's helped him quite a bit. But in general, I would say that it's actually really helps our family in a sense be a bit, you know, bring ourselves a bit more together. Actually.
Yeah, no, and you're right. I think it's been that thing of people. It's again that about that stop that's happened, and people, including your mum and ourselves, where we've sort of gone, right, let's just address where we currently are and what things we can control in terms of our work, and, you know, the people around us, and what's important to us, and what we're actually grateful for, which is something that I think us as young people, we tend to forget about, is like, what are you actually grateful for? I think it's very easy for us to complain and, you know, want other things, and it's about just stopping and thinking, right, I can change this, like your mum changed your job, and then thinking, but what have I got around me, and how is this helping me, and is this helping me, and if so, how do I give back? You know, there's that sort of, it's a two-way street, isn't it? Everything's a two-way street, and no, I think that's a really important.
I think just to say, I think for me, I think it's a lot of it's been to feel how grateful you are for what you've got.
Absolutely,
because I think that's what I think this year has really cited to me. It's a sense that, like, there are people out there who have it so much worse, and I, in a sense, don't get me wrong, I get, you know, having, you know, getting upset and worried about things that I have to deal with, but at the same time, I look at myself and look at other people, you know, around the world, and think, you know what, you know, it's not too bad. It's not, you know, I know there's people that have it having much worse situations than me, so I should be really grateful for what I have.
Absolutely, and I think that was a massive thing for me, a massive learning curve, where, you know, when you feel like you have nothing and you're in a really bad state with your mental health, it's actually think about what you do have and be grateful for it, and actually be grateful. Don't just address the fact that it's there, be grateful for it, and realize that, you know, by comparison, you are a lot better off than other people around the world, and other people who might have the same, you know, state of mind as you with a lot less. You know, we have family, we have friends, we have a roof over our head, we have our health. There's all sorts of things that we can address and be grateful for. So I'm just cautious of the time, so I do just want to move on. And I do want to discuss the Let's Get Mental, the Next Chapter 2021 conference that us as young advisors are running. So this will be our third conference in a row. We do them yearly. And from the name, from the title, which, you know, we discussed over the last couple of months, it is the next chapter. So again, on theme with this podcast, it is about leaving 2020 and how we rebuild and sort of keep the best bits of this year that's just gone, and how we overcome challenges that we've sort of discussed on this podcast today. So, Brian, I want to come to you first. Do you want to talk a bit about the format that we're going for and some goals that we're sort of hoping for in this conference?
Yeah, sure. So anyone who's attended or heard about our previous conferences, we have quite a sort of like specialist style in the way that we do them. It is all run by us as young advisors, run and designed by us. Everything is designed by young people. And so, for example, last year we did a focus on mental health and education. But like Harry said, this year it's going to be focusing on the next chapter. And in terms of what we mean by that, it's kind of looking at everything that has happened and how we can go forward, but not just in relation to COVID-19. We're going to be looking at sort of everything and all the possible changes going forward. So there's been a few ideas bubbling around about what sort of content we'll cover, but I think things like BAME and mental health, and obviously everything that happened with the Black Lives Matter movement, and incorporating things like that into the conference. But it's going to be similar to the style of the previous ones. So we'll have a panel in the morning, which is where we kind of set the tone for the day, and us as young advisors share some of our own personal experiences. And we find that it really sets the scene and gets people kind of a little bit in their feelings, but also in a way that makes them feel inspired and passionate, so that we know that everyone is going into the kind of workshops that we provide with that right mentality. And then we'll put on a couple of workshops for people. We're yet to confirm what those are and how they will look like with everything being online. I don't know if I mentioned that, but it will be online. And then we'll finish at the end of the day with sort of another panel, which will be some sort of Q&A / making sure everyone kind of sums up the day in a nice way. And the goals of the session is really to provide a day where it allows professionals and also young people. We're kind of inviting anyone who wants to attend, but giving people that day to think about, you know, giving them that space to think about everything that has happened over the past year or so, and also giving them the tools to go forward back to their services, or, you know, back to just their own daily life, and figure how we can change things for the better, and how we can really harness everything that's happened to make the best out of this situation we've been presented with. So hopefully there'll be lots of actual physical resources to take back, and also lots of insightful conversations and workshops that will happen throughout the day. So that's kind of the goals of the session.
I was going to say, actually, did you want to follow that? But I don't know if Bri left anything left unsaid.
No, I think she pretty much got everything in there. I mean, I
Sorry.
No, no, that's fine. I think you got everything that needs to be said.
Yeah, it's really unlike Bri to just keep talking until someone stops her. It's really...
Yeah, I kind of like the sound of my own voice sometimes, don't I?
But, you know, really importantly, it is all about collaboration and participation. So
the listeners won't get that inside joke, and we're not going to explain it.
It's just that sometimes Bri has a very thick accent, and then other times she doesn't. But on this one video that we did as part of the Young Advisors, it was so thick, and even Bri doesn't know why it was that thick.
I don't know. I just slipped into this really thick Brummie accent, but maybe if you attend the conference, it'll come out there. So, you know, a bit of plug in there.
Well, if that is not a selling point, I don't know what is. But yeah, thanks. Thank you to both of you for joining me today. So I just want to leave with some tips about how you can keep yourself well, and maybe one tip about how you move forward and moving forward. So Archie, do you want to go first?
So I think it comes back for me to that grateful thing again. I mean, don't get me wrong, 2020 has been a horrible year. I completely understand that from everyone's perspectives, but I think us as a country, we don't look at how bad other people may have it, and I think so. I mean, I've seen a lot of people saying, "Oh, you know, I can't go out clubbing, or you know, I can't go to me pub, you know, and have me beers and stuff like that." I can't meet up with my friends and stuff like that. But I know people who are struggling to pay bills, people who are struggling to get food on the table, people who are struggling with their mental health and that sense. So I just think how great, you know, just be grateful for how, you know, for what you have, and that you're not in the same situation as them. And for those people that are, I should say something about those people as well. And for the people that are in those situations, I mean, my heart goes completely out for you, and really just, you know, do what little you can. Really look after yourselves in these hard times.
That's great, Bri.
Yeah, so I think I'm actually going to steal something that Archie said earlier. Sorry, Archie.
No, it's fine. I see how it is.
But yeah, just like having your expectations as not too much. I didn't phrase that very well. Basically,
Wow.
not expecting too much of yourself or of anybody else or of society, basically. So, you know, don't put too much pressure on yourself to do anything that you don't feel comfortable doing. Don't put too much pressure on yourself to be coping with everything as everyone else is. Like I said, I had my own issues and I dealt with them in my own way. And it was important not to compare to other people who were dealing with it amazingly or whatever. Everyone does it at their own pace. And then obviously having realistic expectations about what's to come. We don't know what is to come, and we can't really pin that down. So just kind of taking it day by day and going from there, I think.
Yeah, thank you. I think for me, a tip that I'd give, that's something that I've been practicing, you know, again, it does go back to gratefulness, but I like to remind the people in my life how grateful I am for them now, which wasn't something that I always did. And like Bri said before, when you sort of in a poor mental state, you tend to forget the foundations because you spend a lot of time, you know, being angry and down and confused, and you know, you can lash out at those people, and then, you know, you look back now and go, well, they haven't left. So I think it's just a good tip is, you know, to remind those people who are close to you in your life that you are grateful for them, and choosing positivity and choosing love. I know for me, getting involved with different charities and helping other people has really helped me feel better. You know, and it really does put things into perspective when you are helping people and animals and all sorts of different charities, when you can see they're really struggling. And I know Archie's touched on that briefly as well when you discussed about people who aren't in such great situations. But whatever situation you are in, I hope that everyone who's listening to this are keeping themselves safe, and, you know, take some time out for yourself in the day or even the week if you've got a really busy job or something. Just take some time for yourself, love yourself, and stay safe. But yeah, thank you for listening, and we will see you in the new year. And follow our social media. It is all in the description of the podcast, and look out for Let's Get Mental, the next chapter, our 2021 conference. So thank you both for joining me. You can both sign off if you want.
Thank you. Bye.
Goodbye. Thank you.
Thanks everyone. Bye.